Hello, today we're going to be going over patch 15.5. This is the upcoming TFT patch that will be out tomorrow, and there are lots of changes, and we're going to go through all of them. If you like my content, make sure to like and subscribe. Normally, I'm doing daily TFT guides, so if you like that style of content, or if you want to just keep up to date with patches, I also do patch notes and best comp videos when the patches come out. There's also the item guides that I just finished, that if you're a beginner player and you want to have a little bit more understanding of how items work in TFT, you could check out these videos updated for set 15. Additionally, I have a VOD channel. If we get to 1,000 subs here, I'll do an RP giveaway. But now, enough with the early stuff. Let's go through the actual patch notes. These are official. I will do a top comps tomorrow. Usually on patch day, I do a top comps. And then the following week, I will do an updated version of those best or top comps to kind of help you guys have a little bit of an understanding of like what I think is like stronger, give you like some kind of like starting point, especially if you're a beginner player, of what to play on the patch. But anyways, this is the patch overview from the website, and now we're going to go through the changes. So, trait changes. A lot of Crystal Gambit changes, actually. I think the mentality or the idea is that they want to make Crystal Gambit cash outs a little bit easier, make Crystal Gambit more of a lost streak trait rather than just a have emblem play 7 Crystal Gambit, which is what it kind of feels like nowadays. But basically, they're increasing the multipliers on stage 3 to 4 to make you gain more gem or more gem value so you can reach some of those higher cash outs. This is especially potent because the stage 3 buff is pretty big, and stage 4 buff actually works really well with general Crystal Gambit boards, because a lot of times, like, you know, if you have a really strong early game and just play like 3 Crystal Gambit or 4 Crystal Gambit on your board, you can get some really nice cash outs, like even some extra components by just fitting in like a 3 Crystal Gambit. Think like an Ash Vertical Juggernaut kind of board. You just play like 3 Crystal Gambit there. So the stage 4 multiplier is actually pretty big. They actually nerfed it before, now they're buffing it back. So I'm unsure how that's going to play with some of the win streak lines, but I think it's going to help primarily like lose streak style lines. Some of the rewards are getting a little bit changed. 210 reward, instead of it being an artifact anvil where you can pick the artifact, now it's a random artifact. I consider that to be a nerf, pretty obviously. Additionally, 250 reward, instead of it being a random radiant item, now you're getting a lucky item chest and 12 gold. I don't know how to evaluate lucky item and 12 gold versus random radiant item. I think the radiant item is better, if I'm being honest, like in terms of power level, but lucky item is tailored and you get 12 gold, so that's a little bit of a rework there. Additionally, higher reward breakpoints are reduced, meaning that you can hit some of those higher breakpoints for the cash outs. Additionally, 5 Crystal Gambit, they're making the thresholds for kills smaller, which means you're going to get some of those cash outs a little bit easier. But as compensation for all of this, 7 Crystal Gambit, lower HP and lower damage amp on whole board, so your board's going to be less tanky, less stable, less reliable. So just keep that in mind if you're trying to play it from Emblem and playing the vertical Crystal Gambit trait. Additional trait changes. Crew rocket damage is getting dropped from 80 to 75. So I think that in crew specifically, if you get like deep into hitting all your 3 stars, the rockets do a lot of damage, a lot of true damage, and can bypass a lot of front lines pretty easily. So that's getting a little bit of a nerf. I think crew is in a weird spot. I think if it's very like win or lose, it's very feast or famine. If you have a spawn you win and you hit all of your units, you're just a win out and you're probably going to go first. But if you don't hit all of your units and it's a very expensive board, you don't have good augments to support you, you get a little bit of a low roll, you can easily go 8th. So adjustments to the damage, I don't think it really changes much of how the comp's going to be played or makes it any better or any worse, because I think it's like a lot of it's just based on like being in a good spot. Edgelord, buffing AD on the 4 and 6 Edgelord. Not by that much, but pretty substantial, especially on the 4 Edgelord, so maybe we can see some Edgelord lines a little bit more popular. This is a big change for the patch. Monster Trainer. Monster Trainer level up is being removed. They're no longer gaining extra health per level. They're no longer leveling up. Monster cash out from Crystal Gambit also got removed. That's one of the meme, like, crazy, strong, whatever, high cap Crystal Gambit ones that you can get. But the main thing is that Monster Trainers now do not get the level up system anymore. We'll talk about it a lot more later, because we're actually going to go through the changes that they're making as compensation. So we'll have a little bit of a discussion on that later, but just as per traits, it's just up there as well. Let's go through units. 1 cost units, only Kennen getting a change. Kennen's just getting reworked a little bit. Heal is getting buffed. Spell damage is going down. So doing less spell damage, doing more healing. Maybe it can work a little bit better as a tank. 2 cost, Gangplank's getting some increase to base attack speed, hopefully make him a little bit of a better mid-game carry. I don't think he's going to be rerollable or in a good reroll spot, but maybe that shows up again. And then Katarina, she kind of fell off. She's getting a little bit of a buff. It's not that much. It's like around like 5% ish. 3-star is getting a pretty substantial buff. It's closer to like 10%. So it's okay. Just to make her a little bit more reliable. I think she's good from artifacts. If you have certain artifact spots that work well with her, like Dawn Core is usually good on her, and even Azanya's could be good on her. So I think these buffs will make those lines a little bit more of a viability if you're in like an artifact encounter. Next, we have some 3-cost changes. So Ari, she's getting an increase to her spell damage, basically across the board. But then she also has an overkill effect. The overkill is getting reworked, so it's doing less base damage, which feels a little bit substantial, and it's doing more overkill damage. Now, it really depends on the build and how you kind of have your Ari. If your Ari is like, barely overkilling, this is going to be a nerf. If your Ari is substantially overkilling, this is going to be a buff. So I don't know how it works. It's a little bit of a rework. It could be extremely strong, extremely broken. It really comes down to like thresholds, right? Like if the Ari leaves you with 1 HP and then she hits you with like a nuke, the overkill is going to be a little bit better. I would treat it more of like a buff. I would think that this overkill increase is good, because typically when you have overkill, if it's just like a little bit of overkill, you don't care about it anyways. The main reason you want the overkill is like if somebody's 1 HP, you want to try and like have as much of the damage that the Ari's dropping, like that nuke that she's dropping, you want as much of that to spill over as possible. This combined with Sorks could make Ari reroll Sork maybe a possibility. I think that was something like Ari Swain reroll was something people tried in like PBE like several months ago, but I would be skeptical of that. I think it's just going to make her a little bit more reliable, and maybe in spots where you can 3-star her, she's going to feel more like a 3-star unit, because she's a little bit awkward in those cases on current patch. Jace getting buffed to 80 across the board. I don't know why, but I think Jace reroll will be good, because I'm looking at that third number for 3-star Jace. That is a substantial amount of AD, and Jace with Caitlyn already was a pretty okay line. It was like very niche, but it was still playable if you had a spot where you can play Jace Caitlyn. I think that Jace is going to be a pretty good carry, because that is a large increase to that AD on that third number, right? The 3-star Jace is going to hit like a truck, in my opinion. So we'll see how it works out. We'll see how it plays out, but I would keep my eyes peeled for Jace on the next patch. Next, we have Nico. Nico, she has a damage reduction that increased when she got to 3-star. They're just making it across the board 40%. When she does her spell, she jumps in the air, she gets DR. They're making it 40 across the board. So that's just a general buff, because she's going to assume me a little bit tankier when she does that. Next, we have Swain. So Swain's getting reworked a little bit. Basically, it looks like a buff and a nerf, but it's basically just making his healing constant, right? He'll have an initial heal, which was a little bit low, which was a little bit higher, and then his subsequent heals, which were a little bit lower. Now all the heals are the same. So it's okay. So I think it's generally a buff, because like he only gets the initial. He's basically getting nerfed on one of his heals, but as many other heals as he has are getting buffed. So I think overall it's going to work out to being more healing, because obviously if the subsequent heals are getting buffed, he's going to subsequent heal more than he does an initial heal. So I think that makes sense there. Viego getting a nerf to the attack speed. Viego reroll is really common right now, but there's going to be some other changes that we're going to talk about. Some of the big changes around power-ups coming up in a little bit. So this is a nerf, but there's also going to be another nerf that talks about the Viego line, so we'll talk about it later. But overall, just less attack speed starting. And likewise, Ziggs getting a buff, more attack speed. With the crew nerf, Ziggs buff, I think crew is just in a spot where if you have like an insane ability to like generate econ or generate the reroll potential to like hit all of the crew units, you can get into a win out spot. But if you don't hit all the crew units and you're playing around crew, it's just a little bit weird. It's just a little bit awkward. It's very easy to go 8th. So, you're gonna have to figure that spot out for yourself. I made a crew guide that hopefully helps you out if you need some extra tips. Next, all monsters are getting changed. So we just heard that there's going to be no more leveling mechanic. So I took this from PBE notes. So there's the patch notes as well, but I felt like it's a little bit hard to read. I think this is an easier comparison of left versus right. So I have one for Kog'Maw, Rammus, and Smolder, and we're going to go through them. I'm not going to read everything. I'm just going to kind of talk about the right-hand side, which is going to be the new version of these units when they come out tomorrow. So in terms of the passive, there's no longer infinite AP scaling, so the passive is getting buffed to do more magic damage. Specifically Kog'Maw, his attacks deal bonus magic damage, and additionally, the max attack speed is now set to 6, which is the same effect that he had at level 30. Additionally, the active trait, it's not going to get too much change, right? It's the same amount of damage that you're doing, same Shred and Sunder, except now he's gaining his on-cast effect, which is the same that he would have on level 15. The only thing that he's losing is like an extra attack speed bonus that you would get at level 30, but in general, I think this is net Kog'Maw buff. Additionally, his base attack speed is getting buffed as well from 0.75 to 0.8. I think this is going to make Kog'Maw a lot better. Right now with the monsters, I think there's like two schools of thought. I think people have a lot of success with the monsters and think that they're good, but I assure you, the whole monster system was trash. They needed to do something to fix it and rework it, and I think this is a step in the right direction because obviously they were just awful. If you got certain artifacts, the lines were broken, but the bigger problem was that either you were in an insanely good spot for the unit, and that meant that you had like a really strong opener, really strong early game. You maybe started with a 2-star version of the unit or something like that. And then you would scale infinitely, and then you would basically just hit Exodia and hit critical mass and win out late game. Or you would try and play these units and it just wouldn't work at all. They just don't function well. You can't put them in later in the game. They tried to rework the EXP and said maybe you can play it on stage 3. That was a lie. You needed to play it on stage 2. They were horribly like just weak. Kog'Maw killed like 0 units up until stage 4, and then usually you were playing with like 1 life of HP, and then you just died anyways because you just fought one person that was level 9, just a little bit higher cap. It was bad. So now a lot of Kog'Maw I think was the worst offender of this, but also Kog'Maw has really broken artifact changes. So I don't think there's gonna be artifact changes as well on this patch, but hopefully like they adjust the way that he interacts with some of the artifacts, because I think with this change and the artifacts, Kog'Maw is gonna be like very Exodia-y, very broken in the early game. But changes, I generally like this because I think now Kog'Maw will function a little bit better. Doing extra damage early is really good. Having the attack speed gaining early and the max attack speed to 6 early is really powerful. Most of when Kog'Maw functioned as a unit and did good damage was when you reached that level 15, level 30 threshold. So now having that off the bat could make Kog'Maw a lot more reliable playing him from early game or stage 2. And then of course, if you want to play him later, you can pivot into and play him because you don't have to worry about the leveling mechanic. So I think Kog'Maw, best case scenario, I think he's gonna be good. Like I think these changes make him a lot better than what he was in his current state. Rammus, hard to say. So Rammus now doesn't gain the infinite armor. In terms of his shielding and leaping, right? It looks like it's overall less damage. It's hard to say, right? But basically his shielding is a little bit more. His damage seems like it's a little bit less. And then he gains more max health though. Like, so he has like more scaling on the max health after taunting. So it's hard to say where he's gonna fall inside this whole like thing. But then additionally, he has this now shooting spines where he's gonna stun them and everything else, which is kind of similar to what he had before. But now he has like this this thing that repeats damage, right? Which I don't think he necessarily had before. Actually, he had like the thing. I guess maybe it's just reworded. That's what I mean. It's hard for me to say because he did have like hitting 3 nearest enemies, which is part of his like base active trait. So it's hard. I don't know exactly where he'll be. That's what I mean to say. Because the big part about Rammus, the scaling mattered a lot more because the scaling gave him like infinite armor and made him really hard to take down. Now he's gonna be a little bit easier to take down, a little bit squishier. But note that his HP is getting compensated and his mana is getting compensated as well. So he's getting more HP and he's getting more like a easier mana. Like he has a lower mana threshold. So overall, we'll see. He also has more healing, so more HP, more healing. I'm not sure how tanky Rammus will be. That's all I mean to say. It's like from reading it, I can't, like, Kog'Maw seems like it's a very clear buff. This one seems like I don't know if he's going to be better than he was or if he's going to be like around the same. It's hard to say. At least for me. Next we have Smolder. So Smolder, I think Smolder of all the monsters was one of the better ones to play around because I think Smolder had enough damage early game, just enough explosive damage that he would actually get takedowns. And getting the takedowns with the previous monster EXP system would give him more XP, so a lot of times you can stay on track with Smolder in the past, right? You would get the XP, you would gain the extra AD, you would be able to level up, you would be on tempo with the rest of the lobby. You'd be level 15, level 30 when it mattered, you'd be in a good spot. I think that he kind of fell off when some of the comps became a lot more tanky and there was a lot more rerolls in the meta. With a lot of the rerolls in the meta, it made it a little bit awkward because then you wouldn't get the takedowns and you would basically have the same problem of damage early versus damage late. But either way, passive stays the same. But then he also has the ignoring of the armor. It's not as much as on level 30. He only ignores 30% of the armor. So it's going to be better for him early game. But I think Smolder's late game cap is going to hurt a lot more. Because I think the ignoring of the armor at level 30 is really good. But he also gets the max mana reduction from the level 30 just built in. You can see his mana threshold got dropped from 60 to 50. Additionally, his damage is getting buffed across the board. So that's good. And then he has his level 15 every 2 casts doing the 75% damage. So overall, I think he'll be around the same. Maybe a little bit better early game because he has that extra armor ignoring. And he does have the increase in damage. The damage increase is pretty good. It's like above 10%. Right? Usually like above 10%. I consider it to be more substantial just by basis of like seeing a lot of patches and how they kind of turn out. So I think Smolder will be in a good spot as well. I think it's net going to make him a little bit better, a little bit more playable. Something that I think is a little bit interesting now is that because there's not the leveling up system, I think that you can maybe do some options of like switching between the monsters. I'm not sure, right? But obviously, like as utility, Kog'Maw giving Shred, Sundering, and Smolder giving anti-heal, and Rammus being a stun bot, there is a potential where these can be like units you could play around in your mid game. I think it's just that they take up too much real estate on a board to be viable to like switch between them. But in a case of like having 3-star versions of the units, you might be able to switch between them. Maybe you don't hit the perfect items for your units and you can maybe like swap between them if you get like unfortunate with items. There might be a chance to pivot off of the units and then maybe like, you know, turn a Kog'Maw into a Rammus and then put your Kog'Maw items on like a TF, right? There might be some interesting lines like that. I'm more curious about testing that out myself, so I'm gonna see if there's anything I can cook up. But I'm a bit skeptical. I don't think it's necessarily going to be a thing, but just keep your minds open. Maybe, like, you know, even though the monster trainer trait, you know, it lost some of its appeal in that you don't level up now, so it doesn't have that like Pokemon cool part where you can like feel like you're playing a little mini game in TFT. It might lose that fun, but there might be a new outlet for fun is what I'm trying to present to you guys. So, you know, let's keep an open mind. Let's see how they play out. I think they'll be good. So, and I'm happy of the change because obviously I didn't think very highly of them on the previous patches. Next, we have Forecast. So Forecast, Akali getting buffed to damage. Akali has been pretty much irrelevant for most of the set. There was like one patch where she was good and it was like the worst thing ever and they like immediately like C-patch, D-patch that shit off the game. I think Akali is a very frustrating unit to play around because obviously when you have these units that have great backline access and able to de-aggro, there's like a fine line of like them being like, you know, fun to play around and then being like absolutely annoying and dog shit. So Akali getting a damage buff. The damage buff does seem pretty good. I'm not sure how broken she'll be. I'm not sure if she'll be like giga strong, but she might be a little bit more playable or at least something good to play around with Supreme Cells because she was basically like an irrelevant unit on the previous patches, which I think is just, you know, in the sake of like being able to play around all the units, you know, blah blah blah. It's good that she gets a buff, but me personally, I can do without having to position around Akali. Next we have Ashe. Ashe is getting a buff to her spell damage, but she's getting a substantial nerf. Ashe's number of arrows now no longer scales with attack speed. This is massive. This was one of the most broken parts about her. It was one of the strongest parts about her, and it's definitely going to be felt. It's definitely going to be something that you're going to notice. I don't know how playable Ashe will be on the next patch. I don't know if she's going to be like completely dead in the water. It's hard to say because her attack speed scaling, basically if you didn't know, attack speed worked really well on her because she was an auto attacker. So she would pump out a bunch of damage, but then her spell also scaled her arrows, so she would have like a multiplicative effect with attack speed to fire a bunch of arrows. Now I think for sure, because her arrows aren't scaling with her attack speed, her build is probably going to change. It's not going to be like Gwinsu Kraken or as much attack speed as possible. I think she'll still be like okay, but like I'd be very skeptical about like the 6 Duelist Colossal Udyr lines. I'd be very skeptical about like some of those other Ashe style lines where she's like ramping up infinite attack speed, because it's definitely going to be like, you know, all that attack speed is definitely going to not translate to as much damage anymore. It's just how much is that going to affect her? It's hard to say. Samira now, She had like a tie break that sometimes she would like dash to like somebody in Timbuktu and it would absolutely suck. She'd be like targeting one unit and then she'd go ult in the corner. Now she's gonna try and ult closer to her the location that she's actually targeting, which I think is good, because like it was kind of like this is like something related to how she sometimes felt like she would grief. She would just like, oh, you know, I'm targeting this unit, I guess I'll just like jump to the back line. So you know, I think it will make her a little bit more consistent, easier to play around. So I think it's like an overall buff. Volibear getting more attack speed on his spell, so that's good. Volibear builds now usually revolve around the attack speed because they reworked him, and he's also okay in a lot of different setups, so there's a chance that he's like a little bit more of a main carry rather than like a +1 on a board. Additionally, we have Yuumi. Yuumi's getting a little bit, like, I would call it like a little bit rework, right? Attack speed getting increased. Base damage on her pages are getting increased. If you don't know, she casts, she summons more pages, and then she does damage based on those pages. Her starting pages are also getting increased, which is pretty substantial, but then her pages per cast is getting dropped from 5 to 4. So she's going to scale less effectively, but she's going to start off doing more damage. If I look at these numbers, I think that it's going to be better, because basically in order for you to realize the lack of pages, you need this Yuumi to cast 4 or 5 times, right? If you cast 4 times, it's basically the equivalent, but she also got a page damage buff. So, you know, I think it's pretty good because she's starting with more pages. I think that will help her out a lot. The problem with the Yuumi is that on current patch, she's just so awful in terms of the damage output that she has that I cannot conceptualize how good this damage increase is going to be. And then there's also the other fact that there's 2 more sentences on this slide saying that the page's true damage is dropping, so the true damage per page is dropping, and the percentage true damage that she does after casting her ult is also dropping. So her damage is also getting a slight nerf. And she was already in a spot where I felt like she couldn't keep up with the current comps, and she couldn't keep up with the current damage output in the game. So I don't know if she's going to be good. I'm hoping she's good, because I think the game was a lot better when there was flexible AP lines that you can play around. But, you know, my bad. Let's just keep, I don't know. So we'll see if she's good. This one's another one that I can't tell, because there's too many numbers changing. I don't know if the starting pages and base page damage is enough to compensate for what's on the slide. And then I also don't know if these are enough to compensate with the attack speed bonus, her being not as good on the previous patches. 5 costs. We have Braum. So Braum's AoE damage is getting increased. So Braum's going to do a little bit more damage when he spins around. And then Seraphine, she's getting some friendship bonus increases. So the resist bonuses and the health bonus are going up. I think in the actual patch notes, they were talking a little bit about how they wanted her to have, like, you know, an ability to play around some of like the weirder traits, like a heavyweight emblem or a bastion emblem, and like make use of those type of things. I don't know how good this is going to be. I feel like this feels like more of like a meme buff. It might be broken, especially the resist bonus and the health bonus. I don't know if this also applies to her items, because right now one of the best items on Seraphine is Warmogs, if you didn't know. There's a way to calculate it, like there's a couple websites that have tables. I showed them in the past, but Warmogs just gave her so much damage amp scaling or whatever based on her power of friendship, right? Where she would have certain stats and they would like increase her damage, and she was really good at having like flexible stats. Warmog just gave so much HP that it worked really well with that setup. And now with the health bonus getting increased, I feel like it might be better. So there's that as well to keep track of. But I also think that these might help with like what they were talking about. We'll see. But I think it's going to be like same boards with Seraphine. I don't think you're going to play like to me, it doesn't make sense to play like a 6 Bastion Seraphine build. Maybe with like a Jinx, maybe it can work, but it just feels like a little bit awkward. Maybe if you're playing like 6 Bastion Xayah and then you play a Seraphine as your high cap, it might work out. It's just like, I feel like she just doesn't cast fast enough to be like a primary carry in those cases. Not like the same as playing like a 6 Bastion TF in the backline or a 6 Bastion Varus in the backline, where they're like pumping out damage a lot more effectively. Here you're just kind of hoping that the Seraphine nuke hits everything and wins you the round in one cast. That's what I mean. I feel like that's what I mean by those boards. We're gonna have to see if there's like a secondary carry that makes them come to life. So some augments, they were talking about augments just being not that popular and nobody really clicking them, and they're removing them to make like the options a little bit better. I think that's a good choice. But basically Bastion Crest, Bastion Crown, Heavyweight Crest, Heavyweight Crown, Juggernaut Crest, Juggernaut Crown, Strategist Crest, Strategist Crown. Gain the Edge, that was the edgelord one where it would give them a bunch of attack speed. I thought that would be pretty good with Xayah. Turns out it was trash. I tried it out once. It was dog shit. And edgelords are kind of in a weird spot, so I think gain the edge is more of an issue with like the edgelords being not very good in a vertical situation, as opposed to like the augment maybe not being good. But I think it's also has to do with the rework of the melee units, right? Like all the units now, they don't gain omnivamp anymore, they gain attack speed. So gain the edge kind of felt like a little bit awkward because you already had a bunch of attack speed on the units, so it just didn't synergize well. But anyways, that's gone. New Contender's gone. Tiniest Titan. Now, Tiniest Titan Plus is still going to be around. I think their logic was like Tiniest Titan is usually not something you take on 2-1, but Tiniest Titan Plus works out a little bit better. Tiniest Titan, I think, was very specific. If you had like a Crystal Gambit spot and you were going for the Giga Cash Out, Tiniest Titan was like a click. Otherwise, you basically didn't click it because it just didn't give enough econ and it didn't really like recover the HP well. Tiniest Titan Plus at least gives you like a good upfront amount of econ, like gives you a bunch of gold. So that one being around still, I think you'll still be able to like play around that like healing thing. I don't think it's like that big of an issue. Beggars Can Be Choosers is also getting removed. I thought Beggars Can Be Choosers was like okay. I talked about it before, but it gives a good amount of upfront gold. So I don't know why it's like strictly getting removed. I thought it was like good. I sometimes click it just to get like early econ and then to like try and sift through the other augments to get some good options. But it's fine. Get rid of it. I won't miss it. And then additionally, I'll be the head, arms, legs. This is the Mighty Mech Prismatic augments that you can play around. Those have been disabled just because they're like kind of bugged. They don't work properly. So if you didn't know they were bugged and you click them and like, you know, it is what it is. But they're getting removed just for now. They said that they're going to reintroduce them. So don't worry. It's not like they're gone forever. Now let's talk about actual buffs and nerfs to augments. So another one. This is the one where you get an extra item after making an item. This one I thought was absolute shit because this is the 2-1 version. It doesn't give you an extra component, so you just make an item that immediately makes you a new item. It's going from 1 gold to 5 gold. So this is like that gold generation effect that I said. If you can make early interest with it, it's going to be a lot better. I think that's a good buff. Aura farming. This is a big change. If you don't think this is a big change, I think this is a huge change. So aura farming is where you get the 2-star 5 cost, you get them on your side of your bench, and then you have to get them you get them on like 4-6 basically. You just have them on the side. It's a gold augment. It basically does nothing, and it usually puts you in a bad spot. I thought aura farming before was pretty trash because you're basically playing down a gold augment for most of the game, and you're hoping that you're going to have some sort of giga win out based on your 2-star 5 costs you're going to get. But by the time you get them at 4-6, it's the end of stage 4. A lot of times you're basically 1 life or 2 lives unless you high roll. If you're playing in a good lobby, you're basically down a gold augment. All the other players, if they're competent, will punish you for being down a gold augment. So it was abysmal. It was kind of you took it for memes or you took it for fun if you didn't have a better option. Being 4-3 now is a lot better, because getting to 4-3 isn't that bad. A lot of times if you're playing around 4-cost boards, playing around level 8 boards, you usually can stack stage 2, stack stage 3 comfortably, roll on 4-2, stabilize, and then 4-3 is right after that. So you can basically do your whole roll down, you can have everything going for you, or you can decide if you're going to like greed or go 9 or whatever. And then you can easily like have much of stage 4, right? You have 4-3, you have 4-4, you have the carousel round, you have 4-5, right? Then you get to 4-6. Like you have those extra rounds. Those 2 rounds can easily give you the competitive edge to actually make it out and like get your top 4. So it's actually a huge buff to that augment. Now, is it going to be good? I still don't know, because you're still sacking your game up until stage 4-3. I don't know for sure. I think that this augment would be amazing with like maybe like a Crystal Gambit spot, right? Obviously, because of Crystal Gambit, like you would sack the rounds anyway, so you don't really care about being weaker. Or if you have like an insane opener that you can win a couple rounds, then I think it would be good. But other than that, I would still be skeptical, but it's definitely a lot better. Bronze for Life. So Bronze for Life originally got nerfed because it was like shit. It got nerfed because it was broken, because the early comps in the set were like all just like Bronze for Life abusing, like Mentor Flex with like mech and just like everything, like 100 things you light up the side of your board and just do infinite damage. Those boards have fallen off. They're not like that popular anymore. But Bronze for Life kind of got nerfed because of that, and now they're kind of like in a weird spot. Getting buffed across the board, I think that's fine. These augments are hard to play around, hard to click. Because like a lot of the boards, like there's not like a good board that makes use of it except like fast 9 boards, and those are less common. So I think it's fine. Buff them all. Caretakers chosen. So this is the prismatic caretakers. Every time you level, you get components and items. And you used to go to Radiant Item on level 7. Now you get on level 8. This is a pretty substantial nerf to me, because the Radiant item that you get on level 7 was great for information, because you can get to level 7 pretty effectively. And before you make your items, before you like do your final commitment of what you're doing, because usually, if you're level 7, you're level 7 end of stage 3. If you're getting to level 8, you're level 8 end of stage 4. Right? Or sorry, you're level 8 at the beginning of stage 4. So that neutral round where you get dropped stuff like on wolves, you can figure out your items. Knowing what you get on level 7 was huge. Now that it's level 8, I think it's a substantial nerf, and I personally will be a little bit more reluctant to click it. Even though it's a really good augment and gives a lot of value, just not having the knowledge, like there's a chance that you just get something that doesn't fit your board, and it could be like really awkward, and then you're just like playing from a disadvantage. Having the ability to play around stuff, or like a Masterworks upgrades, like those type of Radiant augments, typically work out to be pretty well. Now the augment still gives a lot of value, don't get me wrong. I would just like maybe play it from like a gold advantage spot, right? Because if I can be level 8 on neutral rounds, or if I can be level 8 on 4-1, I think it's a lot better, because then I can slam my items, I can have more information. But it's really only like a 1 or 2 round difference. I think for majority of the players, it won't matter that much, because like, if you're making your items, you can wait a turn to make your items, sack 1 extra round, and then level to 8 and figure it out and do it on all the same turn. It just makes it a little bit more stressful, but it is a nerf. Care package used to give rewards every stage, and it was really strong. The rewards it gave were pretty good. I like to take care package and rerolls because it often gave you lesser dupes, which was really nice in addition to the items. Now it only gives items, or it only gives care packages 3 times. Start of when you select it, and then the start of the next 2 stages. So a pretty substantial nerf, because before you were able to get maybe like an extra 1 or 2 depending on how long the game went, and that can often sway you or put you in a good spot, just being up extra components. Escape velocity, this is specific for crew. It's getting buffed, so velocity per level up is 10. I think the way that it works is every 3 velocity you gain 1% attack speed, and it was like a crew specific augment, so making it better. Pretty nice buff all around, so whatever. Then expected unexpectedness, this was really good for as a prismatic, like to treat it kind of like an econ augment. It just gave you a lot of good juice. It's getting all of its item rewards reduced. How much is it getting reduced? I don't know, but it is a nerf. It might make it a little bit less good. Given the chair, Mundo Hero augment getting nerfed to its damage, both on the AD scaling and the HP scaling. Grand Slam re-enabled after bug fix. Investment strategy giving you more HP. Oh, should be green. Sorry, number is bigger, so this should be green. I apologize. But basically, you're getting more health per interest. This is a buff. I'll repeat it one more time for the people in the back. This number should be green. You're getting more HP per interest. This is a buff to the augment. All right? Okay, we're all on the same page. 9 lives. This is the one where you have basically 9 lives. You set the 9 HP, and then you lose HP every turn. Every time you lose a round. The gold is now removed from the rewards, which is pretty substantial. This is only on 9 lives 2, and the 9 lives 1 reward. I consider this to be a general nerf, but basically the Masterworks upgrade option is now turning into a lucky item chest and 12 gold. It's similar to the other one that we saw that I said was a nerf. And then additionally, the artifact anvil and remover is now 3 component anvils and a remover. Now, depending on how you look at it, some people might like components more than the artifact anvil. It's hard to say. These are essentially equivalent, right? 3 components and an artifact anvil. That's like 2 gold augments, right? This is a gold augment. This is a gold augment. Likewise, these ones are pretty comparable. I consider it to be an overall nerf because I think the power swing of these is much more. But typically with 9 lives, you were just looking for the Masterworks upgrade the most with that final life. So I think losing this is probably the nerf part of it. But like I said, up to interpretation. You can treat it as like an equality, and it's fine. Perfect form Zac, mana nerf. He just has less starting mana, so he gets his first cast off it takes more time for his first cast to get off. And then also similarly, hero augments have been really strong. This was one of the stronger ones. Nerf across the board. AP damage nerf and HP scaling nerf. Pocket Recon Robbery banned on 3.2. It's not banned on 2.2. It is on 3.2. I think it was kind of obnoxious on 3.2 as well, because sometimes you would have upgraded 2 costs and stuff, and then you just have like a lot of advantage to play around. So that's fine. Preemptive Protective Shield. This is the protector specific one where you play the protector and they get extra shielding. It's getting buffed. 18% max health. Raid boss, this is the bastion related one where you have one bastion that just absorbs all the armor and becomes like a giga bastion. This is going to be increased. Solo leveling, this is the one where you play one unit early game. Really strong augment, really great econ augment that also gives components. But basically, getting nerfed on the HP, getting nerfed on the durability, make it a little bit less crazy. I think there are some units that just like absolutely like destroyed with this. So this might make it so that like, you know, some of the unupgraded units have a little bit of a harder time winning out on stage 2. Starter kit, this is where you get like specific forecasts and related units that share the same trait, getting some extra gold, so it could be a little bit better to give you some econ intervals. Tesla coil, this item was absolutely busted. If you had a spot where you had a lot of augments, a lot of items, or you had like TGs and stuff like that, this just gets so much damage. It's getting nerfed across the board on the damage. The damage will go up per stage, right? So this is the damage per stage. It's just getting dropped. Warranted change, it's just absolutely crazy strong. I think it still will be strong because the nerfs, especially in the later stages they don't seem that crazy. But of course, it could be like, I don't know. You really just want to play when you have a lot of items. Tooltip now is just properly adjusted. Thorn-plated armor is getting a little bit of a rework. It no longer heals based on damage dealt. This is the one where you get a bramble vest early, except the bramble damage is getting increased. I don't know if it's still going to be as good. It's very strong early game, but part of the reason it was strong was because of the healing effect as well. It did a lot of damage. Bramble vests are good early because units aren't doing that much upfront damage. So a lot of times, a lot of the damage early game is just units like, you know, slapping each other, trying to hit each other with auto attacks. So getting a bunch of armor early is typically good no matter what comp you're going into. So it's a very strong early game augment. And then the healing just made it so your tank never died. So you put on your tank, they wouldn't die, it would do damage, and it would block a lot of the opponent's damage as well. Now you lose the healing aspect of it. Yikes. You know, if your unit dies, then I don't know. It's hard to say, right? Does the damage compensate for it? I don't know. But we'll see. Wandering Trainer increasing the amount of gold that you get as well. Item changes. So Quicksilver is giving more base attack speed just to make it like a little bit more viable as an item, because it's a little bit awkward. They kind of reworked it to be like a lesser Guinsoo, so we'll see how that works out. Titan's Resolve. This one I don't know how it's going to work out. Titan's Resolve now no longer grants the armor and magic resist at max stats. Instead now it grants damage amp. So basically it's going to give you stacking AD and AP, and then it's going to give you damage amp. Now, personally, I don't know how good that is, because it's kind of like when I read it and I think to myself, it sounds like a worse version of a Giant Slayer, right? Like, it's giving 10% damage. It gives stun immunity, which is good, like CC immunity, but now it doesn't give the armor and magic resist. And that was pretty substantial on a lot of units. Like, the main reason people use Titans was because of the extra armor and magic resist stats that it would give. Because otherwise, you would just make another item. I'm not sure. But I think Titans is kind of in a weird spot. Because, like, they changed the whole way of, like, drain tanking and, like, melee units, like, generating mana from getting hit. That doesn't exist anymore. So, I don't know. Me, personally, I don't know if this is going to be good. But to me, like, when I read it, like, if I'm going here and I'm going items, right? And I read this, like if I read Giant Slayer gives 20 AD, 20 AP, 15 damage amp, and then additional 15 against tanks. And it also gives attack speed, right? And then Titans, what does Titans give? It gives a little bit of attack speed. Oh, I guess it gives more AD AP. It's 2% stacking up to 25 times. I always forget because they nerfed it on one particular set. Titans was broken on every unit because they all just love Titans. So they nerfed it to 1, but then they buffed it to 2. Okay, maybe it is. Then it's not the same. I thought it was at 1. So it does give more AD AP, so maybe there's a use case. It might be a better backline item, maybe, because now you don't really get the armor. I don't know. I don't know. I think upfront damage is usually better than this stacking, so I don't know. We'll see. I wonder if it's going to be better than like a Kraken. Is it ever better than a Kraken? This is 3% stacking. It might be better than a Kraken if somebody needs both the stats, right? Because they'll get 50 AP AD. And this will give 60. But if you're an AP AD unit, like maybe TF likes Titans now, it might be TF bis. Thoughts? Like TF is like Titans, Morello, or Titans, red buff. I don't know. I'm just trying to cook. I'm trying to think. It's confusing for me. Radiant Adaptive Helm. It's getting some buffs. I think this is one of the worst items in the game. It used to be bugged. I still don't know if they fixed the bug. And I'm not going to try it out because nobody ever clicks this item and I never see it in use. So until I know if it's not bugged, I'm going to report to you guys that I'm not going to try it out anyways, no matter how much they buff it. Because before it used to just not work. It just used to not function as an item. But these are pretty substantial. This gives a lot of extra stats. 60 and 60, I feel like this item, just reading it, it sounds like it's broken. Right? Like compared to other Radiant items, getting 15 extra, like that's a huge upgrade. That's pretty substantial. So we'll see. If it's not bugged, I expect this to be a really relevant Radiant item on the next patch. Radiant Giant Slayer, they're nerfing the damage amp or the base damage amp. I think it was like really strong, the base damage amp. So yeah, makes sense. I don't know why. I think regular Giant Slayer is also broken, but they didn't touch that one, so I don't know. But anyways, Quicksilver increasing that attack speed, same thing that applies to the non-Radiant counterparts. And same thing with Titans. They're reworking it to give the damage amp instead of the armor MR. Artifacts. Silver Dawn increasing the AD and the armor MR. Silver Dawn, I think, should just be removed from the game. I'm going to be 100% honest. You know, you can decide yourself if you think that it's fun and cool. I think the item fucking sucks. I think it's either broken Exodia on a unit, where it just makes them into a monster and it's just really frustrating to play because like it just gives so like it just fundamentally doesn't make sense. It gives you so much AD, it gives you so much resist. It just turns a unit into a monster, but it locks their attack speed. So if you have a unit that doesn't care about the locked attack speed, it just turns them into a monster. Now they got rid of the mana generation problem with it because that's what it was. Before it was a monster. It was like you put it on Jace before when it gave mana generation. The Jace was literally having a better average placement than 3-star 4 cost. It was fucking absurdly broken. And it's like that every time. Every time there's a unit that uses this item, it's absurdly broken. So, like, they're just trying to compensate now by buffing it on its stats. Just remove it from the game. I think, like, I don't think anybody's sad that Silver Dawn wasn't good on the last patch. I think it's either, like, whatever. But, like, these buffs, I don't know if it's going to be good or not. But at one point, if they keep buffing it like this, it will hit a critical point where it will turn into what it was before, which will be broken on a very particular unit. And then if you marry it, that you have the particular unit and you have the Silver Dawn, you'll have Exodia and you'll just win the game for free. That's basically what's going to happen. I don't know if it's at that point yet. We'll have to see. But just keep it in mind that it's getting buffed. So if you see it around, caution. Next, you have Talisman of Ascension. They're increasing the HP. This one, too, I think is just really awkward. The HP increase is nice, but I still think this is like you play it from very specific spots, if at all. Because this item just like, it basically does nothing. Like the amount of stats that it gives you, even if they buff from 300 to 500, it's like, how do I phrase it? The artifact does nothing until you get the second proc of its effect. It's very like first or eighties. You need a unit that can sustain themselves basically down an item more or less to like get to that cash out. Now 200 HP is pretty good. It's almost double the amount of HP they gave before, so there is a chance that this item is better now. But like I said, it's gonna be on particular units, right? This on like a Mundo, probably this on like somebody with HP scaling is probably gonna be pretty nice, so keep that in mind. I think it also is probably really good on like Mundo Hero, because then you don't even have to worry about him dying because he's gonna be in the back line, stuff like that. But this extra HP increase could make it a little bit better, right? Right now, it's one of the worst in the game. Hopefully, it becomes like an average Ornn artifact. I think that's like the dream scenario for most of these. You want them to be kind of average. Maybe there's like a broken setup you can make if you can cook something up. But for the most part, you're not like sad to see it when you open up your artifact anvil, which is what it was in the previous patch. Suspicious Trenchcoat just sucks this set. Just doesn't really work well because it doesn't stack with the fruits properly. I think it's like one of the worst ones in the game. Really hard to play around. Getting disabled, I think that's fine. Just put it down, right? I wish I saw this word for more of the Ornn artifacts. But you know, that's a me thing. I'm a hater on Ornn artifacts. Well, not like a hater. I just like don't like some of them, like this one. Mogul's Mail, gold interval 10 seconds. This makes the gold generation a little bit more awkward, and you probably will get a little bit less gold with it. So that's just an overall nerf. I don't know how much it's gonna equate to, because it, like, you know, the units that love the Mogul's Mail, they love it. So you're probably gonna average out to getting like 1 less gold per round, which could be a lot. But that's only if you're getting to like these high stacks, right? If you're not even getting to like 35, then this is not super relevant anyways. Now, you thought we were done. We're only getting started. we have a lot of power-ups to go through. I'm probably going to go through this part a little bit faster, by the way. I'm not going to read everything about it. But let me just take a sip of water here. I really don't like power-ups this set. I think the power-ups were all fucked up. Basically, there's too many of them that are like Exodia. They're like Orn artifacts. They have this insane power level that just makes your comp either completely broken or not broken at all. And I think a lot of them I had problems with. I've ranted about them. I ranted about them before everybody else ranted about them. I want to make it very clear. I posted in my Discord in the meme channel as a joke because I went on multiple day rants talking about how I hate the power-ups in this set, and it's the main reason I don't enjoy the set that much currently. What they're doing is they're trying to remove the power-ups that are swaying the boards to be extremely broken and extremely powerful based on power-up alone. The good examples of this in particular are going to be stretchy arms, which we've seen multiple times make a comp extremely broken. Giving a melee unit extra range is something that is absurdly powerful and often creates these Exodia-like scenarios that make things really broken. We've already had a situation with this with Gangplank. Remember when Gangplank was broken and everybody was hard forcing Gangplank because the unit just like fucking was like broken as shit? They had to completely rework Gangplank. But they kept stretchy arms in. I would have preferred they just remove stretchy arms. I like the units being strong and the units being playable, not the units being tied to a particular scenario. Right now, there's a comp with Viego that uses stretchy arms. Same thing applies, right? I would prefer if Viego himself was a playable, strong unit and stretchy arms just wasn't there, because then you would be able to, like, play the unit instead of having to play the unit and then find the specific power up to make the unit function like the way that you built the unit to function. Because then if you don't hit the power up, which is what happens a lot of the time, you run into a really bad scenario. The other one that's even worse than this, in my opinion, is Fusion Dance. I think the Darius comp is, you like, when you're building your units and you're building your items and you're choosing how you do your power ups and you're planning your game, you have to play around stuff like Fusion Dance, because obviously if you're playing Fusion Dance, the big user of this was Darius. If you're playing Fusion Dance with Darius, it sways your placement by way more than the set mechanic I think should sway a placement. You literally go from like maybe barely making a top 4 to playing for first, whether or not you hit Fusion Dance. And the odds of hitting Fusion Dance were low, but it's like they have these power-ups that are just so absurd in certain situations that they completely sway and change how you not only itemize the units, but how you play the units. So then early in the game, you have to decide to yourself, do I build my units one way? Do I build my units another way? Do I try and do the whole fruit remover thing? And the bigger problem is that a lot of units have this problem. These are the big offenders, what I would say. The ones that they're removing here, I think is a really good change for the game, right? Some of these are just like ones that nobody ever clicks, but stuff like removing Fusion Dance and stretchy arms, I think are healthy and good for the set. And I think that will make the set more enjoyable, because instead of being frustrated trying to find the one particular fruit to make sure that your comp functions correctly, we can now focus on buffing and nerfing the units and balancing the units for what they are, units in TFT, instead of these interactions with the power-ups in particular and balancing units around the power-ups in particular, which is what has been happening over the course of multiple of the patches. So I think this is a great change. If you don't agree and you're like, damn, I miss stretchy arms, it's silly, it's fun, I'm sorry, you know, it's unfortunate, but yeah, it's hard to balance, it's hard to play. I think that this is a good change. The other thing they're doing, the power-ups, these are all going to be some of the changes. We'll go through them really quickly after. These are just like buffs and nerfs to the ones that exist. They're changing the power-ups per the champs. For every single champ now, what they're doing is they're going through the champs and they're removing some of the power-ups that are not quote-unquote good or not very applicable to the unit. So they're limiting the size of the thing, and then they're also reordering which power-ups are more common on the unit. Now, I looked through this myself, and some of these I agree with, some of them I don't, but for the most part, I think this is, again, a really good change. One of the big problems, we're not going to go through every single one of these, by the way, but there's a lot of units where you get one of these things and you just know that they're dog shit. Like, you do not care about hitting them, right? For example, like Kale. Do you really want Keen Eye with Kale? Like, of course not. She already shreds, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, it literally doesn't synergize well with the unit. There's other things that also, like, kind of do this. There's a lot of these, fruits that you would see in your thing and you would just be like, wow, all of these suck. And additionally, with the units, they kind of just didn't function well with what the unit wanted to do a lot of the time. right? It was like this unit doesn't cast a lot, but they're getting a casting fruit. This unit doesn't scale well, but they're getting a scaling fruit. It was like really weird. And I think the choices were like a bit like I think they had the mentality of let's just give everybody a lot of options and let creativity fly. But what it worked out to be is that we gave these units a lot of options, and now it's like a nightmare to sift through these dog shit options to find the one that actually does something for the build, right? There's units that want to do damage. They don't get damage fruits. They get like 5 fruits that boost, like Jinx, for example. She gets like 5 fruits that boost attack speed, and she gets like 2 fruits that boost damage, and her ult gives her attack speed. Sorry, her passive, not her ult. Her passive gives her attack speed. It's like so ridiculous because like you never want to give her attack. Like you can take them, they're fine, right? I guess. Like, you know, maybe you can go like a full attack speed Jinx build, but it's like most of the time you're just looking at Jinx, you're like, please God, I just need something that does damage. This unit has enough attack speed. She's faster than everybody. She's the fastest in the West, right? And it's like stuff like that that I think they're fixing. So overall, I commend them. This is what I wanted to see in the game change. Maybe they'll bring me back. A lot of these, you can go through them on your own. I can't really go through everything because it's literally like every unit in the game. And I don't want to make this video like another hour long, giving you my hot takes or my opinions on every single one of them. For the most part, they're good. In terms of some of them, I think that there's other ones that are pretty bad that I didn't really like. For example, Samira was the one that I was looking at that I wasn't particularly happy with. So one thing that's really important is also what's primary and what's secondary. So on the edge, for example, this is one that was Samira's best. It's obviously your best one. It's not even close. Like the damage increase you have for on the edge versus the other ones, it's not even close. Like you can trust me on that because usually when you're playing Samira, you build crit early. You're very rarely going to rely on finding the crit fruit. So you already have crit. So there's another one that gave her crit. That one wasn't as good. Shadow Clone was not as good as on the edge. Usually you have crit, you have your base stats, and on the edge, which is broken. It was like you will like it makes Samira into a unit. A lot of times when people played Soul Fighter with Samira, they were like, this unit fucking sucks. And the main key to making the unit not fucking suck was to give her on the edge. And that's kind of how the game is kind of balanced. But now they're making it more common to hit on the edge. That's like a really good change, right? But then at the same time, they removed stuff like Killer Instinct, Ordinary. Nobody ever used these. It's fine. They all sucked. Bludgeoner was one of the more common ones. They moved it down. That's fine. This one was one that was okay. One of the other primary Samira fruits is Crimson Veil, if I'm not mistaken. Now, I'm hoping to God that this isn't a conclusive list, because that shit tilts the shit out of me. Because, like, why do I need more Omnivamp on Samira? It literally, like, I know there's some meme builds where you make the Samira unkillable, but the biggest problem Samira has is damage. Why do we need to give her healing? It's like, what are we doing here, right? But there's a lot of cases like that. For the most part, a lot of these are getting, like, you know, either removed or like not used. Like stuff like Classy, a lot of units are getting them removed. Stuff like some of these, like I don't agree with, like Efficient is really good on Braum because it just doesn't to cast earlier, but these ones are getting removed. They're making them more like melee focused or more damage focused, which I think is fine. They're just going like a different route with it. They're adding like more attack speed to Gwen. That's fine, right? But basically all the units getting some changes. I think overall, like I said, I think this helps the set. I think it helps everything. I think there's a lot more fruits that are getting removed from units. So there's going to be a more limited pool for each of the units. But it's going to be easier to hit stuff so you can more easily plan around it. And that, I think, mitigates a lot of what felt like the RNG aspect of the set, which will make it a little bit more easy to plan your items, plan your builds, and then hopefully hit something that then synergizes with that to actually maximize your damage and make a coherent unit and team that actually works functionally, instead of like, oh, I built these particular items, I roll this fruit, oh, this fruit sucks with these items, now I have to reroll the fruit, oh no, my options are worse, now what do? I ran out of fruit removers and my board is just really unoptimized, and now I just lose the game for free. That was like a big experience that I had with the set a lot of times, and it was frustrating. Of course, I'm not like, you know, a challenger, top level competitive player, but I think even they were complaining about it as well. Not to say that I'm like I said, I'm not a competitive, like that level of player, but to me, this was like my biggest gripe. So I'm happy that they're doing something to address it. I think this is a great change. Hallmark staple, like banner of the patch, thank God, because like I was going to lose my mind. I was about to go on another fucking fruit rant on my stream. Now, let's talk about the power-ups. These are the power-up nerfs. We're going to go through these real fast, and then I'll just go through the bugs a little bit at the end. But basically, system, they adjusted the appearance rates of the secondary versus primary ones. Like I said, you can go through it on your own. I kind of scrolled through them a little bit. I did some little point outs over there, but like I said, it's just going to take too long to go through everything. But anyways, Classy now has more effectiveness. Classy only appears when the silver trait or when it's silver or higher. So that means that like if you have a bronze trait active, it's not going to offer you Classy. So this can also be good for if you're fishing for fruits to like keep the like you can switch your board out to make sure that you don't hit the Classy fruit on your unit and then switch your board back in. But anyways, Desperado number of attacks getting nerfed. Desperado damage is getting nerfed. I didn't even know this was broken, but sure. Drift Duel no longer have a stage restriction, so you can hit it whenever. Drift Duel level is now 7 to 9. Hungry Hero base AD 8% to 10%. And Hungry Hero health is now up to 150. This is the one where you sacrifice HP to make your unit stronger. I think these numbers are getting to the point where they're like similar to how Briar was when this mechanic existed on a unit in a previous set of TFT, specifically in set 12. So these numbers actually are starting to look pretty juicy. So if you have a spot for it, if you're ahead on HP and you have like a unit that you want to juice up, it might be worth it to juice up that unit. Hungry Hero no longer offered on stage 3. They reworked Icebender. So Icebender now, it's basically going to do less damage. The chill duration is going to be smaller. But it no longer does the damage on cast. Then it chills on the first instance. But then it amplifies all of ability damage by 20%. So it has like this damage amp effect as well. So there's like a little bit of like a rework for it. Hard to say how strong it's going to be. Final boss only offered after stage 4. Golden Edge is... Final boss. This is the one where I think if other people died, you get extra like amp and stuff. So this one being offered after stage 4 is a lot better, because if you got it before, it was basically an instant skip, because it's like, well, I'm not going to click this. I don't get any value off of it right now. Golden Edge now no longer works on PvE rounds, a big one, and it's no longer offered on stage 3. So you can hit those econ ones a little bit later. And also you can't farm up on PvE rounds, which is a pretty substantial nerf. Golden Gloves. Weight is getting increased. I think it's just to make it a little bit better. This is the Kabuko specific one. And Golden Gloves AD is getting increased from 1.5 to 2. Maybe it makes the Kabuko a little bit stronger. Heart of Gold no longer offered on stage 3. This is another econ one. Hero's Arc weight is getting dropped. Max speed is getting increased. Max vitality no longer stacks on PvE rounds. Mecha Blade percent AS, so this is the Aatrox specific hero one, is now getting more percentage of max HP. Mecha Blade is on stage 2 only. Mech Pilot stat share from 80 to 70%. Mech Pilot no longer has stage restriction. Mech Pilot as well. If you have a Mech Pilot, now you get 2 for free. Mech Pilot bug fix. Execution now properly applies spell crit when combining the Mighty Mech. I think there was also a Mech Pilot bug where it gave extra HP. I don't know if they're addressing that, and I don't know if it's a real bug. But like if it exists, like whatever, I guess they don't care, or it just isn't a real bug. But I was looking for that, but they didn't have it. Midas Touch no longer offered on stage 3. Ordinary no longer offered on stage 3. Ordinary weight is getting increased. Ramping Rage attack speed per attack is getting increased. Shine Brighter bonus damage getting increased. This is, I think, the luck specific one. Singularity health per kill is now 15. Singularity no longer works on PvE rounds, so they're doing this for a lot of the scaling ones. I think that's really good, but at the same time, it also is going to give you less stacks, so be careful. Spirit Sword magic damage is getting nerfed 40% to 30%. Spirit Sword also is going to become more common on Jhin. So I think this one is really strong, like I said. And but now it's getting nerfed, so it's going to be a little bit awkward because there's also the artistic KO. But there's a big debate which one's good. But you're also going to see it more often. This one's really hard to find because it was less common on Jhin. Starry Night getting increased with the health per 1 cost, excuse me. Stormbender damage percent is getting decreased from 25 to 22. Veteran is re-enabled. So before it didn't work properly. This is the one where you get it on specific units like Katarina, and you play mentor with her and she becomes a mentor. With the Katarina buffs as well, this might be really good, right? Kabuko Katarina reroll, excuse me. Wait's no longer offered on stage 3. I'm going to slowly scroll through this part so that if anybody wants to pause, you can pause, so you don't have to like search out the website on your own. But this was the part I was talking about before, where they're adding different things to primary, meaning that they're going to be more common, moving things to secondary, meaning they're going to be less common, and removing different fruits on different units. But like I said, I think a lot of these are just good. A lot of them are just like removing stuff that doesn't make sense or that you don't necessarily want to have on the unit. Some of them I think are a little bit like hot takey that I'm not super like okay with or not super like crazy about. But at the same time, it's like it's gonna change a little bit of how the set is kind of approached and played, which I think is a change in the right direction overall. And then of course there are the main ones that got removed from everybody. Specifically stretchy arms and fusion dance, I think, are the main takeaway ones. The other ones were kind of like alright, but some of them were just bad, so that's why they got removed. But those were two of the really dominant ones that really defined certain comps. So Darius reroll obviously going to be a lot worse, and then Viego reroll obviously going to be a lot worse. Samira set. Braum got a lot of things removed, by the way. And also Lee Sin. I think the 5 cost had like some really crazy stuff. And now bug fixes, I'm going to leave them on the screen while I do our closing remarks. But thank you for watching. This was a big patch. I tried to break it down in the best way possible. I think the patch is generally good. A lot of the issues that I had with the set are getting addressed with the patch. Obviously, like I always complained about monster trainers not being in a good spot. And I think that this is a good step in the right direction. I like the fruit changes. I think that this will set up for a lot easier balancing in the future patches if the patch comes out tomorrow and it's not particularly like crazy or amazing. I think that it will have lots of room for improvement, because I think one of the hardest challenges is finding a way to balance the fruits while balancing the units, especially when you have these Exodia type pairings. And I think removing some of those, as well as reworking how you approach the fruits on the units, is going to be really good. I think it's going to make it much more consistent at finding fruits that fit your build a lot better, because I think that was a huge problem that I had personally when I was playing the game. And I think that's the big changes. Additionally, we had some unit changes that might shift up some of the meta. Obviously, like Ash nerfs, Akali buffs, things like that. We'll see how it plays out once we finally get to the live patch tomorrow. But of course, I'll do my best comps tomorrow, as per usual on patch day. So I'll give you a full rundown of what I think are the best comps and what I think are the things that are good and good to play around and stuff like that. And that will be out tomorrow, hopefully early, but it might be a little bit later. Depends on when I have time to play the game, because I like to get some practical experience, so I'm not just like pulling it out my bum. But anyways, thanks for watching, have a great day, and see ya. Bye bye.